Welcome, welcome. We are going to keep running through here. Joe, thanks for coming. There's been a lot of news as of late, none that you have directly shared, so I'm excited to be talking here today.
I'm really excited to be here. I think it's a good omen that we've got the clearing of rain.
Yes.
And it's very nice to be on this side of the street again. So
Yeah.
great to be back.
Actually, let's start with that really quick. 2019, you sold $750 million, not so bad. You went a couple of years at Goldman. What was that like from building the largest national RIA business, from then being at a big bank to now being on the other side?
So it was almost 4 years. I'd say it was an incredibly powerful and learning moment for me as a human being, just because the first business I sold to General Electric, I lasted about 6 months in a 5-year contract. So I assumed that would be the case here. And then, of course, we sold to Goldman, and they had said to me, hey, Joe, we want you to lead our retail wealth management efforts. And I just thought it was lip service to get a good deal. And it turned out to be an amazing experience, especially the first couple of years, because you learn a lot. There's 400 partners at Goldman Sachs, it's 40-some thousand employees. And it's remarkable, the harnessing power, the convening power that a firm like Goldman Sachs has. So I'm first and foremost a learner, and I like to grow. And so it's an incredible experience, most especially during COVID, to see how much information we had access to. So it was, you would have partner calls at 4:30 in the morning here, West Coast, and you would have the governor of the Bank of Japan doing a fireside chat with the partners, and every Tuesday we would have a call. So it was a remarkable experience. The business actually grew very quickly initially. We got a lot of leads from private wealth, a lot of leads from ACO. I was leading ACO with Larry Risteri, their workplace and personal wealth, and it was a great voyage. Our advisors were growing a ton. And then there was a shift in the strategy. About 3.5 years in, I was on vacation with my daughters this last Christmas, and my girls were like, Dad, you don't seem so happy. What are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. And I came back to Goldman. I said, look, I don't know that this is right for me. They asked me to work on an RI strategy, which I'm very excited about what the firm's going to do for independent advisors. And in that process, I thought, I think I know what I want to do next. And that caused this idea for what I think will be my next iteration. I find most of the industry spends a lot of its time in the here and now and in the past, rather than going, where are we going 10 years from now? And so that's where I spend my life, is thinking about where should I be going, because this is where the great opportunities are. But it was a great experience. I have kind of mixed feelings about what's happening now, honestly, because I think for most of our advisors, they assumed that was going to be their ultimate home. And just so everyone knows, when we sold, we actually asked all of our advisors, we had a private equity sponsor at a very similar price, and Goldman Sachs. And I said, guys, I don't think we can ever find a better home for all of you, but you all need to decide. And 96% said, let's go with Goldman. So it's where they all wanted to end up, I can tell you that.
And you really can't predict those types of things and how things end up. I actually want to start prior to your professional career, because I've now learned over the time studying several successful people that their upbringing plays a pivotal role in their grit, their tenacity, their drive throughout their career. And so when I did a little digging on you, your story is pretty wild. And so I'm just going to read this out, and I want to talk a little bit about it. All right, so you were born in Barcelona. You were raised in Zimbabwe during a civil war. Grew up relatively poor, not a great relationship with your father. You left home at 18, traveled around Europe, landed back in Spain, studied marketing and finance, met your beautiful wife, who's from LA, and found your way here. Yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit about that journey and how that shaped your professional career.
So it's almost indescribable, because it sounds like a made-up story, at least to me, reliving it. To say it was a tough upbringing would be a ridiculous understatement. Like, I had a father who would beat the hell out of me. I stopped seeing him at 14, the last beating that I got. My mom didn't make her way through high school. She taught herself how to read and write, and she was Spanish growing up in Zimbabwe. We were there in the midst of a civil war. I had my own submachine gun at 12 years old. My parents we all lived. My dad had a motorbike accident, went into a wall, and ended up in a studio apartment over a Chinese takeout restaurant. And we were all, me and my two sisters, basically sleeping all in one living room at a friend's house for a year of my childhood. And I started working at 11. I didn't have a choice. And having now my own 3 daughters, I realized the advantage of having no choice but to survive. And that came to me here. Like I came to an incredible country that gave me the opportunity to start fresh. And when anyone says anything about this incredible country, I'm always like, there's only one place in the world, an idiot like me. My mom would tell me, you're an idiot, you're awful at studying, you're going to America, what do you think you're going to make yourself? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to be like J.L. Ewing. Because there was a TV show, you're probably all too young to remember. And I thought, I'm going to go do it, and it turned out all right. And I have an amazing marriage of 30 years, 3 incredible daughters, none of whom will know the hardships, and we can't pretend that they will ever know what it feels like, but there are 2 things you have a choice in this world. None of them have anything to do with what happens to you. The first one is you can choose how to react, and that power is really important, but it's not as important as the choice of whether you think the world is happening for you or to you. And I've been very lucky in my life that I've believed in the Albert Einstein quote, which is the most important decision any person can make is whether they live in a kind or hostile universe. And I chose at 14 years old to say, we live in a kind universe. So I'm gonna believe in karma and that the right thing ends up happening ultimately. And so I've tried very hard to do the right thing, to make a positive impact and always give more than I get. I've built 2 companies, wrote the first checks, hired the first person, and ended up with around 10 to 12% of each because we gave a lot of equity to the people around. We gave a lot of opportunity to the people around. And when people say, well, United Capital, a lot of people also have a huge ego and all the rest, which is okay. The reality is that it takes a village. It takes a lot of people carrying alongside. And it's important one person has a vision that is credible, but it's also important that person lives up to the standards that you establish. And that if you say we're a giving community, you're a giving human being. So I've been very lucky. I would change nothing of my upbringing. And I worry sometimes for my own daughters that they don't know what that's like, and that resilience comes from adversity. That's how you get good and how you get strong.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I love that lifestyle that you really believe in. I want to shift now to scaling United Capital, because that's where most people here will have probably known you and watched you do it over the course of really 14 years. So 2005, you launch United Capital. You grow it all the way through to 2019, 25 billion, over 220 advisors. You were arguably the first RIA aggregator in the space and ushered in that model. At the time, right, capital was relatively cheap, interest rates low. Yeah. What did you see as that opportunity to do that, and what was that journey like for you?
Well, look, this was true the first one. We built one of the first TAMPs in the nation too. The reality is there are shifts that happen in the industry that take 10 to 15 years to unfold. The first one was that I participated in with a shift from commissions to fees, and I thought people don't know how to do a fee-based solution, so we built a TAMP. The second one was, hey, people want advice from an objective person that includes their entire wealth stack as a fiduciary, and I don't see anyone doing that. And the reality is there were firms like Focus at the time that were making investments in firms of all kinds of types, and I'm like, I want to build one brand with one culture, with one platform. And at the time, everyone said we were crazy, just like when we say we're going to charge fees for wrapped mutual funds at the time. When you start something new, people will say, that doesn't make sense, or it's crazy. At the time, I was told, these advisors are all independent. They want to do what they want to do. And I'm like, that's okay. I don't want all of them. I don't want the pirates. I want people who want to join the Navy. Yeah. And now,
I love that, by the way.
There's so little original thought. When I look at the industry now, everybody's doing the exact same thing, which actually is, in my view, a version of United Capital that's not as good for 2 reasons. There's no original thinking about the client experience. Like, we had used behavioral economics to make the voyage inside the firm to be truly delightful. and insightful. Your life was not going to be you were going to have a fundamental shift in your view about money when you met with one of our advisors. And number two, we believed very much that if you're going to come in and join us, it really matters that we're making your business better. And our average advisor was in their early 40s. Most of the acquisition firms today are acquiring advisors who are retiring, whose clients are much older, because there's typically a 25-year window between the age of the advisor and the clients, 10 years younger, 15 years older. So if your advisors are 55, the average client's probably 62, 65. And so it's interesting to me that all the models now are basically, well, what Joe did was, what United Capital did is they acquired advisors, they integrated them, so let's do that, and let's do it with advisors who are retiring. We'll put a young advisor in, and that's a great business. Well, it's not a great business. The underlying clients are in their 70s. They're using 4% of their capital to live, plus you add a 1% fee, you have a 5% attrition rate. Is it any wonder that any of the aggregators today have no organic growth? They're dragging a 5% attrition rate. Our clients were in their 50s. Kids were just off to college, which means that they're in their mass accumulation phase. Literally, we'd just wake up every day, and our clients would add every year 5% to their core assets. So we had an organic growth rate of 5%. We had young advisors who want to grow their income. That added another 5%. And what's happened now is private equities come in, all smart guys, but they don't differentiate between one advisor and another, or their client set or another. They're paying the same multiple, with the same model, with no imagination, with nothing that fundamentally improves the underlying business. You're basically doing a financial arbitrage. We'll fire the advisor, we'll plug in a junior advisor who's not a good salesman, or they'd be a G1, they wouldn't be a G2, and we're going to give them nothing to grow organically. So to me, I'm like, that just seems like very unimaginative.
Yeah.
And so again, when I look at the industry, there's a whole subset of folks who are not being catered to that we should be. There's an arms race right now about all the wealth management, like how many services can we offer? Let's do tax prep. Let's do bill paying. And I'm like, hey, how about we think about being original about helping people live a better life around their money?
Mm-hmm. Quickly focusing on Goldman again.
Yeah.
So they came knocking on your door, offered you $750 million. You just pointed out that...
It wasn't that clean, you know.
It never is, right?
We had, I'll share a little inside baseball here because it's kind of fun. We had a first round with them, and they came back with an LOI that I didn't feel was like tangible. It was very nice, it had good words, it had some math, but the gentleman who was leading the transaction is no longer a partner at Goldman. He called me and said, Joe, you haven't responded to our LOI. I'm like, well, this isn't an LOI. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's just a letter. Yeah. And he says, it's not a letter, it's Goldman Sachs writing it. I'm like, that's great. It's a letter from Goldman Sachs. And I said,
it was on nice paper, right?
Yeah, it was a nice paper, and it was a very nice statement. But I said, I'm not responding because I've got real offers from real firms that actually have terms and conditions. And my board at the time said, and this was a cause for some consternation with my partners too, they said, Joe, you can't walk away from Goldman. I'm like, no, we can. And we'll only go back if there's a real deal. And at the time when I called Charles and I said, Charles, listen, we're not responding. He's like, you realize if we walk away, we don't ever come back. I'm like, I know, it makes me very sad, but I don't know how to respond to what you've given us. And so we then went down our road and ran the formal process because they and a couple others wanted to preempt. And then we get an actual real transaction. I don't want to give the name of the firm, a really respectable private equity firm that I was very comfortable, loved the leaders, loved the team. And by the way, they're not all private equity is not created equal. There are different strains of partners. I've had 7 of them in my career in both businesses. Anyway, then I get a call from Charles, and he goes, hey, Joe, how's it going? I'm like, it's going great. And they said, oh, I heard you're back out on the street, because nothing happens anywhere that Goldman doesn't hear about. Like, that just doesn't happen. And at the time, my banker, Bill Nook, said, Joe, should we call Goldman and invite them? I'm like, under no conditions. He's like, why? I'm like, under no conditions are we to call them. He's like, why? Like, they'll want to know. I'm like, no. They'll find out. And of course, then Charles calls me. We have this lovely chat. It's Friday afternoon. I'm driving home. And we talk for 30 minutes about our kids and his trip and the weather and all of that. So I'm getting to my son. I'm like, okay, Charles, well, it's been really great catching up. He's like, oh, by the way, I hear you're like launched a process. I'm like, it's not a surprise. Of course we have. He's like, I just want to check in and see, like, would we be disadvantaged if we took a look? I'm like, not at all, not at all. And so from that, we actually got to the finish line. But I can say, when you're negotiating, being crystal clear about what you are worth is very, very important. And not playing shenanigans and not playing games, but also realizing that when you're selling, you have to do it right. One of the other things we did that was very important is a lot of our management team, our non-executives, had not gotten enough equity. And so part of the sale price, we actually said to people, to our private equity sponsors, we want to peel $30 million off the top, $6 million for charity, $24 million for our teams, and everybody at almost every level of the organization ended up making hundreds of thousands of dollars on the sale, which was a clip we took at the end, which again helped everybody feel a lot better about the situation. So look, negotiations are delicate. I think you want to always be transparent. We included our advisors on the entire dance, which is, I think, something that they respected. But you never know how they're going to work out. And again, as I mentioned, it was an amazing learning experience. I wouldn't change a thing. I think it reset the market because, frankly, multiples after that, everyone said to me, you shouldn't have sold. I'm like, well, if I hadn't have sold, a lot of the transactions that happened since would never have occurred because every PE firm then said, well, if Goldman is willing to pay that multiple for that business, we can use that as the exit multiple for all other transactions.
So everyone here should be thanking you.
They don't have to thank me, but it did make a difference.
Yes.
I don't know if they'll thank me now because the logical extension for everyone in this room is, if Goldman is selling it, what are the exit multiples now? Because when you look at the landscape, I'm a little bit concerned about what happens with these large national firms. What is the actual multiple? Mm-hmm. Because at an IPO level, are these things in a public market going to be trading at 20 times EBITDA or 30 times earnings with no organic growth? I believe that the future really relies on organic growth above all else. And if you haven't figured that out, it is going to be very hard to get a good multiple. So, my obsession for the next 10 years is backing the next generation of advisors, showing them how to grow and scale. There is a multiple arbitrage because these firms at $1 billion to $5 billion are not trading at the same multiple as the $10 billion firms. There are plenty of buyers for $6 billion firms. There are very few buyers for $40 billion firms. And I'm not sure what the exit looks like. I think it'll be very interesting. But how long can the sponsor-to-sponsor transactions go on for? Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the challenges real quick, because obviously you just started to allude to what the next 10 years looks like for you, and we're going to get into that. But thinking about what the last 10 years looked like in terms of the attraction or the allure in the private space into the RIA space and looking at that, fast forward now and looking forward, we're assuming it's going to be a different environment. What kind of challenges do you think lie ahead for most of the RIA operators out here?
Look, the question is, who's going to own your upside? If you have $2 billion or $3 billion, who owns your upside? Is it you or is it the person you're selling to? Because the transactions, as far as I can tell today, are almost all cash and almost all limit your upside going forward. So if you're 15 years left in the industry, would you rather have your stock or the stock of the person you're taking or the cash? Now, if you have a 15-year runway or 10-year runway and you have the ability to grow your platform, double it or triple it, you'll unquestionably be economically better off as long as you know what you're doing. That's the truth. That's what I believe. And when I look, I'm like, there are tons of Gen X advisors who have no solutions available to them, who want some capital to grow, who have a great strategy, who have a niche, and most importantly, you're dealing with clients who don't care about geography. Our entire industry is still speaking to the baby boomers who care about having a face-to-face meeting. Well, guess what? Those clients are now past their apex. They're using all their capital, and nothing against them. But to me, I'm most interested in the next generation of clients who do not care about geography. They care about one thing above everything else. Do you work with people like me? Do you understand people like me? Do you know the things I'm going through? And people like me might be divorcees, it might be people who are doctors. It might be any specific niche, but I'm a big friend of Michael Kitz's, and I agree completely with him. You have to be a niche player that you can then make national. To me, because geography is not relevant any longer for people who are Gen X or younger, and they are digitally comfortable. They're not digitally native like the Gen Zs, but they are digitally comfortable, that you can change the model. You can use technology to increase your scale. You can use technology to actually interact and live where your clients live in a totally modern way. And most importantly, you can take your brand and expand its reach to places you couldn't imagine, because the clients don't care if you're down the street or not. So there's a massive opportunity to expand really good regional firms and make them national. Let them keep the economics and their growth. Show them what they don't know. Like what we've tried to do is think about what kind of partner would I have wanted that was more than money, that knew all the blind alleys that I could avoid, with a team of people that know how to do it. How do you bring recruits? How do you expand geographically? It's very different than to have 3 offices and to have 30. It's very different to do 1 acquisition than to do 10. And by the way, you can be your own United Capital. And that's where I think, if you look at every major industry, from accounting to law firms, you're either the acquirer or the acquired. And I very much believe there's an opportunity to help the next generation of advisors to be the next platform firms, rather than sell their future to somebody like a United Capital, which again, might be great for them when they're ready 15 years from now, but build the equity before you transfer it. It's what we did with selling to Goldman. Look, we could have gone to 50 billion, but I'm like, I've had as much fun as I can stand. This is a great home for everyone. We've done great work for our clients. This is an amazing home for them. And it's time to go to the next mountain.
So what are the characteristics of a successful advisory firm that you would be looking at?
Look, there are 3 things that every firm who wants to scale has to get right. The first one is often the most ignored: business management. What's your service model? What is your leadership style? And are you measuring and tracking the way it operates? Most of these nice-sized firms, billion to 3 billion, they've gone from lifestyle to an ensemble practice, but none of the discipline required, which every firm at 30 billion has: measurement and tracking, leadership, the right executive team, the right weekly cadence of meetings. So there's business management. Second is your tech stack. What does your enterprise platform look like? How do you serve clients? How do you serve your advisors? And how does your back office integrate? If your data doesn't flow, the future is data. It is all data. If you don't have interoperable systems that you can apply AI on, because this is where we're going to be 3 years from now, you're going to be able to go onto your system, talk into your computer and say, I want every client who's got a financial score of X in their financial plan, who's got over $1 million and invest in this, in multiple systems, pull up your list and send a letter telling them that I have this interesting opportunity they need to look at. That's where we're headed, which means you need to have your data flow. In order to make that work, you need middleware, which is what I'm obsessing on right now, a whole team. How do we connect the tissue? Not because we need all the data in one place, but we need to have access to all that data, because AI, it's not like blockchain. AI is the internet. It is going to change everything, everywhere. And in order to make AI work, you need data flow. So if you don't have forward-leading data flow where things are interconnected, you cannot be competitive in the next 5 years. You'll have a nice little boutique lifestyle business. So the technology stack is imperative, might be the single most important. And last, growth strategies, both organic and inorganic. How are you executing? It's not a hobby. You have to have a deliberate plan. You have to have money. You have to have measure and track and execute. And you will not be able to afford to simply give away 25% of your future revenue forever, because you can bring in clients for less than that today. Most people don't know where to begin. So it's like, well, I'll just give up 25% of the revenue, which is frankly the profit margin that most of these firms have. Yeah. So I think there are opportunities, but those are the 3 areas: business management, enterprise platform, and growth strategies.
So you brought up AI, so I want to just touch on that real quick, because obviously that's a hot topic in and around pretty much the world, but very particularly in the wealth management space. So let's fast forward to future-proof 2033, right? We're sitting here 10 years later. We're talking about the industry. What do you think will have changed? What will this conversation be based on technology and AI?
I promise you in 3 years we'll be having the conversation you think we'll be having in 10. I don't think anyone really grasps the amount of innovation that's happening right this minute with AI. I mean, I have the good luxury of being able to speak to some of the most interesting wealth tech firms. And it's everything from little things like putting an AI on a separate account portfolio with tax managed that you can deliver for 8 basis points. It's everything from being able to identify the next best action your clients are going to want, being able to connect their social life with their work life so that when they come in from a link, you actually know almost everything about them right at your fingertips. Like, it will be 3 years from now, not 10 years from now. 10 years from now, I don't have no idea, but I do know 3 years from now, our conversations will be completely different about where the industry is headed, and I find it incredibly exciting. That doesn't mean we're going to lose the human hand-to-hand interactions. It does mean that onboarding and managing clients will take a fraction of the time it takes today. Servicing clients will take a fraction of the time. You'll be able to serve many more hundreds of clients today per advisor than you do today at 60 or 80 or 100. You'll be at 200 or 300, and they will have no depreciable decline in service. Because the way AI is going to help us to serve at scale is going to change everything.
Yeah.
Won't change the role of the importance of humans, but one thing I know for sure, people pay advice to be understood. And AI allows us to understand what you're thinking and feeling before you do. That is really powerful. And at its core, we are paid a fee, not to deliver management, but to deliver advice. At its core, your fee is linked completely to how well you understand your clients. You will have no choice but to use behavioral economics. You will have no choice but to use AI so that you know your clients better than everyone else. Otherwise, we will deliver solutions that help us to know your clients better than you do. Like, we're going to be forced to a level of intimacy and knowledge about our clients that will require the use of data and AI. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time, and it won't be 10 years from now.
I love that. A couple minutes left. There's been some rumblings in the news lately. Again, as I mentioned, none of which you actually shared. You mentioned that you are going to share a little bit here. So talk a little bit about what your third venture is and what you plan to be doing, and maybe what people in the audience might have interest in.
I think this third venture is the one I'm probably the single most excited about, because everything that I've done has led up to this idea, which is the ultimate goal of partnering truly to help people build their own wealth. And so we've launched Rise Growth. It's launching in early next year, but we're already in discussions. We have over 50 billion in assets that we're discussing. And the goal's very simple. Partner with the next generation of national firms. Help them to build the business management systems, the technology stack, and the growth strategies with a team of partners who've done it at their side. So we provide the capital. You can take money off the table, and we encourage you to put half of it on your balance sheet so we can show you how to double and triple and quadruple in size in a modern way, so that you keep 70% of the equity, we invest for 30%, and we take you to places you could never go alone to build the partner I wish I'd have had in both ventures, with people that are huge-hearted, good people with a really big mission that do important work. So we're super excited about it. It's called Rise Growth. You can go find it we just launched the website today. We'll go official probably in early next year with our first set of partner firms. And we are right now looking at the partner firms that we think we can make into true national platforms. We're very excited about it. We're calling it a synergistic financial partner. And that is a combination of both capital, financial, and synergistic, which is strategic. And what we see today is they're people who are very good strategic acquirers, and they're very good financial partners, but no one's combined the two. And every firm I've seen with $2 or $3 billion has the same problem. I need the money, but I also need to know what to do with it, because it's complicated. There are ceilings to break through and things you've got to do differently if you're going to become 5 billion, if you're going to become 10 billion, 20 billion. And so our goal is to partner with the best technology in the country. We've brought in great partners to help us do that. I have a couple of them right there. Brian is sitting right there to help, and Dan. And we've all done it before, so we're super excited about it. we'll encourage you to go look at our website. Again, we'll launch early next year, and we're looking to really disrupt the industry again, just help to build the next generation of great firms.
It's amazing. Joe, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, and have a great trip, everyone. Appreciate it.